The chain-link fence clanged every time Bruno, the broad German shepherd, hurled himself at it, jaws snapping like scissors. Workers at Sunny Paws winced, seeing yet another visitor bolt in alarm after meeting his fierce, warning golden eyes. A bright red tag on his gate screamed, "Extreme caution," hanging like a stubborn traffic light frozen on red. Found in a deserted junkyard, he arrived filthy, scarred, and thin, with trust broken into sharp, painful pieces. Since that day, he rejected treats, kicked bowls, and snapped at even the gentlest, well-gloved hand that dared linger. Seasoned trainers used slow voices and patience, yet his bark thundered down the corridor, shaking windows and courage alike. The director lost sleep because space was scarce and an untouchable dog blocked a kennel that could have saved another stray. Behavior notes stacked high, each darker than the last, painting a portrait of a heart welded shut by pain. Volunteers quickened their pace past his run, whispering sorry, shoes squeaking toward easier cats, and puppies craving hugs. Some whispered Bruno was a lost cause, a ticking problem nobody could defuse, although no one said the words within his hearing. Nights were the worst. His lonely howl echoed through empty halls, bounced off mop buckets, and slipped under locked doors. Cameras showed him pacing endless figure eights until dawn, nose pressed to cold tiles, dreams forgotten, escape still out of reach. Staff tried toys, blankets, even a ticking clock, but nothing stilled the storm spinning in his battered chest. Word spread through town about the beast dog, and foot traffic thinned quickly as adopters feared cages packed with danger. Yet deep under his trembling muscles, a tiny spark still flickered, hidden beneath blankets of fear thick as winter coats. He paused whenever footsteps stopped instead of fleeing, ears tilting, eyes wide, as if a secret part of him begged to trust again. Calendar pages flipped faster than hope could grow roots, and the grim review date crept closer, casting a heavy hush over staff meetings. The director circled last chance options in bright red ink, silently begging for a miracle nobody dared predict aloud. Yet fate was already jingling down the wide hallway, wearing butterfly clips, grass-stained sneakers, and a skipping rhythm. 8-year-old Maya pushed open the door, licking ice cream from sugared fingers and carrying more quiet courage than anyone else inside. Maya's father volunteered on weekends, cleaning cages and walking calm dogs, but Maya headed straight for the kennel covered in warning tape. The director stepped forward to block her, yet her confident smile halted him like a velvet rope. She pressed her small, sticky palm against the cool mesh, unfazed by the deep growl that rattled bowls on the shelf behind her. A handler nearby held his breath, expecting snapping teeth, but Bruno only froze, puzzled by eyes filled with honest wonder. "Hi, big guy," Maya whispered, voice as soft as cotton clouds and as calm as bedtime stories. Her words drifted through the fence, carrying warmth brighter than the golden sunbeams that striped the concrete floor of the aisle. The dog's ears twitched left, then right, startled by a tone containing no command, no threat, and no trace of pity or baby talk. Maya stayed still, breathing slow, counting to 20 the way her school counselor taught for settling butterflies in her stomach. At 19, Bruno's shoulders sank, and he sniffed the scent of strawberries, crayons, and safe summer afternoons. The girl's father rushed over, heart skidding, yet she simply turned and said, "He's sad, not mean, Daddy," as if stating tomorrow's weather. Volunteers exchanged wide-eyed stares, but the director felt the first quiet crack form in the iron wall around the dog's heart. They let Maya sit cross-legged outside the kennel with a picture book, making her promise not to poke fingers through the wire. She read tales about brave knights befriending grumpy dragons, pausing to show bright pictures of scales shimmering under castle torches. Bruno paced more slowly, ears swiveling like radar toward her voice, shoulder knots loosening as if someone untied ropes holding him tight. By day's end, he lay near the gate, massive head resting on crossed paws, eyes half closed yet still alert to each page turn. Staff hurried to log the change, typing hopeful notes that felt lighter and sweeter than any entry written during his stay. All week, Maya repeated the routine: sit, read, smile, and slide one square of cheddar through the gap at sunset. Bruno never ate in front of her, yet every dawn the cheese vanished, wrapper licked spotless and folded like a tiny napkin for guests. Maya giggled at his tidy habit, telling the dog she liked his dinner manners far better than her older brother's messy snacking. The shelter clock kept ticking, marking 7 calm days without a single snarl at Maya's gentle voice, and staff wondered what tomorrow might reveal. On the 8th afternoon, Maya arrived with a new plan. She set a folding chair inside the exercise pen beside Bruno's run, waiting silently. The staff agreed but stayed back, leashes ready, hearts pounding like drums behind rib cages, every muscle tense with both fear and awe. Bruno watched her slide through the gate, his low growl rising then fading when she sat and turned sideways, avoiding direct stare-downs. She opened a sketch pad and began drawing comic animals wearing crowns, her colored pencils clicking softly. Minutes stretched like warm taffy, dust motes swirling in the late sun, yet neither moved closer, sharing air thick with possibility and quiet wonder. After her third picture, Maya gently pushed one sheet across the floor, letting it stop halfway between them. Bruno crept forward, one paw at a time, nails scraping concrete, eyes fixed on the paper rather than the girl. When his nose finally touched the drawing, he sniffed, exhaled, then surprised everyone by lying down beside it. A cheer almost burst from the handlers, yet they bit lips, worried loud joy might fracture the fragile thread of trust forming before their eyes. Maya drew another image, this time a brown dog with a smile, and slid it closer, rewarding the brave approach. Bruno scooted nearer, tail low yet wagging faintly like a shy wave hello from behind a curtain. Maya's father timed his breathing, astonished a child's patience outshone every professional technique they had tried. The next day they repeated the ritual, and Bruno reached the paper faster, confidence spreading like sunrise. By the third repetition, Maya extended a closed fist, letting him sniff knuckles that smelled of crayons and soap. He licked the back of her hand once, a lightning-quick gesture that caused 3 volunteers to gasp, then clap hands over mouths. Tears pricked the director's eyes. Here was the miracle scribbled in books yet rarely witnessed in real time. Paperwork for euthanasia was shredded and recycled. The sound of shredding machine made never sweeter. The kennel sign changed from red to yellow, warning of caution rather than danger, and hope rose like balloons inside the shelter. Maya celebrated by reading Bruno his first chapter book, pausing so he could sniff each turning page as if smelling freedom itself. When the overhead lights dimmed at closing, Bruno pressed his great head against the kennel bars, tail thumping a steady thank you to his tiny friend. With caution downgraded, Bruno was finally allowed into the grassy play yard, a space he had only sniffed through bars before. Maya stood in the center like a lighthouse, arms at her sides, while a trainer clipped a long lead to the dog's harness. The shepherd circled, nose low, tail midair, mapping scents of clover, tennis balls, and distant traffic on the breeze. Maya knelt and scattered small pieces of turkey in a loose trail toward her sneakers, then waited, motionless but hopeful. Bruno's ears flicked, hunger wrestled fear, and at last he followed the savory breadcrumb path right to her shoe tips. Pride lit the trainer's face brighter than stadium lights as he clicked a marker and praised the dog for brave nibbling. They practiced sit, touch, and down, each cue spoken gently by Maya, each success rewarded with cheers and snacks. Soon Bruno's tail wagged high, its rhythmic thumps slapping against fence posts like a metronome, keeping time for progress. Children from a nearby school visited on a field trip and watched, eyes wide, as the once vicious dog performed polite hand targets. Maya explained to classmates that patience was a superpower anyone could learn, even if they never wore a cape. News of the transformation traveled fast through town, shared over coffee cups, in vet waiting rooms, and finally exploding through a viral local newspaper post accompanied by cheerful photos. Adoption applications trickled in, but Maya surprised everyone by asking her parents if Bruno could come home with them instead. Money was tight, and their yard was small. Yet her parents remembered the first day she met him and could not say no. The family spent weekends reinforcing fences, hiding shoes, and attending training classes so everyone spoke the same dog language. Bruno, once skeletal, gained healthy weight, his coat shining like freshly polished mahogany under the sun. Vaccines updated, microchip registered, and a blue tag engraved with Bruno loved jingled on his collar. The night he finally left the shelter, staff-lined hallway, clapping softly as he walked out, head high beside Maya. Outside he paused, sniffed the open air, and stepped into the back seat of their old hatchback as if it were a throne. Maya buckled beside him, reading aloud the goodbye card volunteers had signed, her voice steady despite watery eyes. The car pulled away, and the glowing shelter sign shrank in the rear window, replaced by a horizon of new beginnings. Life at Maya's house began with simple routines, sunrise walks, measured meals, and nightly cuddle stories read on the living room rug. Bruno startled at every motorcycle at first, but Maya carried treats and calm words, grounding him like an anchor in choppy water. Within months, neighbors who once crossed the street waved hello, admiring his shiny coat and proud, prancing stride. Maya's mother, a nurse, suggested Bruno might have the heart to be a therapy dog, despite his rough start. They enrolled in a basic canine good citizen class where Bruno learned to ignore rolling wheelchairs, drop crutches, and clattering lunch trays. The test day arrived. Bruno heeled next to Maya, sitting when she stopped and wagging politely when strangers greeted him. When the evaluator stamped pass on his certificate, Maya jumped so high her sneakers squeaked against the gym floor. Their first volunteer visit was to a retirement home scented with lavender lotion and lemon polish. Residents gathered in cozy chairs, surprised when the big shepherd padded calmly down the carpet instead of charging. One quiet man in a plaid blanket reached out a shaking hand, and Bruno bowed his head, resting it gently on the man's knee. Tears glimmered in the old man's eyes as he stroked first softer, then the flannel of memories he rarely spoke about. Word spread, and soon Bruno's calendar filled with school reading days, hospital smiles, and library pause to read afternoons. Maya created trading cards featuring Bruno's photo on one side and tips for kindness on the other, giving them to every child she met. The pair even visited Sunny Paws Shelter, standing in the very aisle where their story began, to inspire volunteers not to lose hope. During that visit, Bruno stopped outside the last kennel, where a trembling beagle cowered, and he lay down, nose pushed against the bars in silent comfort. Staff gasped at the full-circle moment as Maya explained that bravery could be shared, like light from one candle to another. Afterward, a journalist filmed a short piece titled "Girl and Dog Heal a Town," which aired on local news and later online. Comments from viewers ranged from cheers to promises of adopting senior pets, and donations poured into the shelter budget. Bruno, once called Beast, now wore a blue therapy vest embroidered with gold letters that read "Kindness Ambassador." As winter snowflakes drifted past the window one evening, Maya hugged his thick neck and whispered, "See, I told him you were only sad, not mean." Spring returned with blooming jasmine and buzzing bees, and Maya's town held its annual park fair brimming with families and bright banners. Bruno walked beside Maya, vest on, greeting children who lined up to pat his head and collect kindness cards. At midday, wind grabbed a kite, tangling its tail around a toddler who stumbled near the lake's edge. The toddler's mother screamed as the child toppled forward, slick grass sliding under tiny shoes toward deep water. Before any adult could react, Bruno lunged, guided by Maya's urgent command, and grabbed the kite tail in strong jaws. He planted his paws, muscles bunching, and hauled backward, dragging kite and child away from danger as staff rushed in. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause louder than the fair's brass band, echoing across food stalls and game booths. Paramedics checked the toddler, declaring only a muddy knee, while the grateful mother hugged Maya, tears streaking her cheeks. Reporters snapped photos of the shepherd sitting calmly, tongue out, as if rescuing toddlers was a regular Tuesday chore. That evening, the mayor presented Bruno with a bone-shaped medal reading "Hero of Harmony Park," placing it on a red ribbon around his neck. Maya taped the ceremony program to her bedroom wall, beside the first sketch she ever slid under his kennel door. Newspapers nationwide picked up the feel-good story, "Former Junkyard Dog Saves Child," and adoption inquiries to shelters spiked again. In school assemblies, Maya spoke about patience, responsibility, and how listening to a scared heart can turn fear into friendship. Bruno stood beside her on stage, letting hundreds of hands stroke his back, eyes soft, tail painting slow half-moons in the air. Sometimes, late at night, the memory of cages still flickered in his dreams, but Maya's gentle hand always soothed him awake. Each dawn they walked past the junkyard where he once hid. Bruno sniffed the rusty gates, then trotted on, choosing the open sidewalk. Maya's father joked that nobody could touch the dog at first, yet now nobody could ignore the goodness he spread. The phrase became a town motto printed on banners, "Kindness changes everything," with a paw print replacing the letter O. Years later, people still told newcomers the tale of the fierce shepherd who found his courage in the gaze of a little girl. And whenever Bruno lay curled at Maya's feet, chin resting on that original drawing, both knew their story had only just begun. Years passed like the pages of a well-loved book, and Bruno's muzzle slowly frosted into gentle silver. Maya grew from a brave child into a confident teenager who still greeted each sunrise with her furry best friend. They practiced new games that kept his mind bright, like finding hidden toys or following scent trails across the park. On weekends, they visited the animal shelter to mentor skittish dogs, showing staff how patience felt when spoken in wagging tails. Bruno would lie down outside every fearful kennel, humming a low, calm rumble that sounded like a lullaby written in dog language. Pups watching him learn trust faster, as though his steady heartbeat served as a drum guiding them toward peace. Maya recorded these sessions on her phone and shared them online, and soon the videos circled the globe collecting cheerful comments. People thousands of miles away wrote that they copied her methods and rescued their own impossible dogs from sadness. Teachers asked Maya to create simple lesson plans, and she made colorful charts showing steps. Watch, wait, whisper, reward. The town library hosted weekly Calm Canine Hour, where kids learning to read aloud found courage beside Bruno's warm shoulder. He listened with the seriousness of a judge, blinking slowly as each child sounded out tricky words and then grinned in triumph. Newspapers once again printed his photo, labeling him the teacher with 4 paws, and kids taped the clipping to school lockers. One autumn, a storm flooded many homes and evacuation centers buzzed with worry, but Bruno arrived wearing his vest and steady smile. He wove between cots offering comfort, letting frightened toddlers hold his leash while parents filed paperwork. Volunteers said they saw fear leave rooms the instant his soft ears passed through doorways, like clouds parting for sun. After the crisis, the mayor announced a new community program named Project Bruno, funding therapy dog teams in every district. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Maya spoke into a big microphone, reminding everyone that kindness had once fit through a tiny kennel gap. The crowd cheered when she finished, and Bruno barked once, a deep, joyful sound that echoed off City Hall steps. That evening they walked home under a sky glittering with stars, and Maya promised her friend that tomorrow they would help again. Bruno leaned against her leg, heart steady, knowing that even when fur turned white, the work of hope never grew old.